Judge Emma Stevens sat at her big wooden desk in the courtroom. She had been a judge for many years and had seen many cases, but today felt different. Today, she was about to hear a case that would change her life. The courtroom was quiet, and everyone was waiting for the trial to start. The defendant, a man named Tom Wilson, was sitting in the chair. He looked nervous, his hands shaking slightly. The lawyers were getting ready to present their arguments, but Judge Stevens couldn't stop looking at Tom. Something about him seemed so familiar. As the trial began, Emma listened carefully to the details. Tom was accused of stealing money from a local bank, but Emma had a strange feeling that he wasn't guilty. She kept watching him, and then it hit her. She recognized him. When she was a little girl, Emma used to play in her neighborhood with a boy named Tom. They would ride their bikes around the block and play basketball together. Tom was her best friend, but after moving to another city, they lost touch. She hadn't seen him in years. Judge Stevens blinked and leaned forward. Was it really him? She tried to stay focused on the trial, but the memories kept coming back. She remembered his laugh, his favorite red cap, and how they promised to always stay in touch. But she never heard from him again. After a few moments, Emma decided to take action. She asked the bailiff to stop the trial for a moment. Everyone in the courtroom went quiet, confused by her sudden decision. "Excuse me, Mr. Wilson," Emma said, her voice calm but firm. "Could you please tell me where you grew up?" Tom looked up at her, surprised by the question. "I grew up here, in this city," he said, trying to stay calm. Emma smiled. "Did you ever live near the old oak tree park? Were you ever friends with a girl named Emma Stevens?" Tom's face went pale. He stared at her for a long time. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "Emma? Is that really you?" The courtroom gasped. No one could believe what was happening. The judge and the defendant were childhood friends. It was shocking, unexpected, and very strange. "I can't believe this," Emma whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "After all these years—" The courtroom was silent, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. But Emma knew this was not just about the case anymore. It was about finding out what happened to her old friend. Why had Tom been accused of a crime he might not have committed? What was his story? Emma stood up, motioning for everyone to wait. She had some questions to ask, and they were more important than any trial. She turned to Tom and said, "I need to know the truth. What really happened?" Tom took a deep breath and looked around the room. The truth was not as simple as anyone thought. Tom took a deep breath and looked around the room. The truth was not as simple as anyone thought. He stood up, his hands still shaking, but his voice steady. "Emma," he began, "it's been a long time. I never imagined our paths would cross like this." Judge Stevens sat back down, her heart racing. She could feel the weight of the room's attention on her. The tension was thick, and she had to know the truth, even if it meant stepping away from her role as a judge for a moment. "You don't have to explain everything right now," Emma said softly, "but you owe it to yourself to tell me what happened. I know you, Tom. I know you wouldn't steal from anyone. So why are you here?" Tom looked at her, his eyes full of sadness. He took a deep breath and sat back down, facing her across the courtroom. His voice was low, but it echoed through the silence. "I never planned for things to turn out this way. I never wanted to hurt anyone, let alone get into trouble with the law. But life hasn't been kind to me, Emma. After you moved away, I got lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I made some bad choices." The room was still. Even the lawyers and the witnesses seemed to hold their breath. After high school, I tried to make something of myself. I worked a lot of different jobs, but nothing stuck. Then one day, I met some people who promised me a way out of my struggles. They said they could help me make money, fast. All I had to do was follow their lead. I was desperate, Emma. I didn't think it was going to go this far. Emma listened intently, her heart aching for the boy she once knew. She remembered how carefree and full of dreams he had been. This didn't sound like the Tom she remembered. She felt a pang of guilt, wondering if there was something she could have done back then, something to keep their friendship alive and help him avoid the path he had taken. I started working with them, Tom continued, his eyes filled with regret. At first, everything was fine. They gave me a place to stay, a steady income. But then, it all changed. I found out they were doing things that weren't legal, like stealing from businesses and banks. I wanted to get out, but they made it clear that leaving wasn't an option. They threatened me, Emma. They told me I'd never get away from them. And when the bank was robbed, they made it look like I was the one who did it. The courtroom was silent, as everyone processed what Tom had just said. It was hard to believe. But Emma could see the fear in his eyes. She had known him for years, and she could tell he wasn't lying. So, you didn't do it? She asked softly. Tom shook his head. No, Emma, I swear I didn't. But they framed me. They planted the evidence, made it seem like I was the one who stole the money. I didn't even know about the robbery until it was too late. By then, they had already set me up. I've been running ever since, trying to stay ahead of them. But now, they've found me. They're still watching me, and I don't know how much longer I can keep running. Judge Stevens felt a chill run down her spine. She had never imagined something like this happening. She had thought that the justice system would always work in a clear and fair way, but now she saw how easily things could go wrong. Tom, she said, her voice full of compassion, if what you're saying is true, we need to make sure you're safe. But you can't do this alone. You need to tell me everything, all of it. I'll help you, but I can't do it unless you trust me. Tom's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. I trust you, Emma. I always have. And I need your help more than ever now. Judge Stevens took a deep breath. She knew what she had to do next. This was no longer just a trial. It was a fight for her friend's freedom, and she would do everything in her power to help him. All right, Tom, she said firmly. We're going to make sure you're not convicted for something you didn't do. But we'll need to gather proof, and we'll need to do it fast. The longer you're in this situation, the more dangerous it gets. She turned to the courtroom, her expression serious. I'm going to call a recess. We will pause this trial for now. I'm going to investigate this case myself, and we'll get to the bottom of what really happened. The judge's decision shocked everyone in the room. Some people muttered in disbelief, unsure of what was happening. But Emma didn't care about their opinions right now. She had to help her old friend. As the recess began, Emma stood up from her desk. She looked at Tom one more time before leaving the courtroom. Stay here, Tom. I'll be back soon. And don't worry. You're not alone in this anymore. Tom smiled weakly, his eyes full of gratitude. Thank you, Emma. I never thought I'd get another chance. Emma didn't respond. She just walked out of the courtroom, her mind racing with questions. How could she have missed the signs that Tom was in trouble all these years? Why hadn't they kept in touch? And most importantly, how could she fix things now? She had no answers, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let her childhood friend go down for something he didn't do. She was going to make sure he was safe and clear of these false accusations. Outside the courtroom, Emma's phone buzzed. She picked it up and saw an unfamiliar number. Hesitating for only a moment, she answered the call. "Hello? Emma Stevens?" a cold voice on the other end asked. "This is just the beginning. If you think you can save your friend, you're wrong. We're watching, and we don't like people messing with our plans." Emma's heart skipped a beat. The voice was threatening, and she knew the danger was real. She had to act fast, but she couldn't do it alone. She took a deep breath and gripped the phone tightly. "I don't care who you are," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not backing down. If you want a fight, you've got one." She hung up the phone, her resolve stronger than ever. The case was far from over, and she knew the road ahead would be dangerous. But for Tom and for justice, she was ready to face whatever came next. And as she turned back toward the courtroom, she knew the real challenge was just beginning. Emma stepped back into the courtroom, her mind spinning with thoughts of the phone call. She couldn't shake the feeling that the danger was closer than ever, and the stakes were much higher than just a trial. She had to find a way to protect Tom and get to the bottom of the people behind the crime he was accused of. The courtroom was filled with whispers as she took her seat. The lawyers and witnesses were still talking in hushed voices, clearly confused by the sudden recess. Emma didn't have time to explain herself to them. There was something bigger at play here, and she had to act fast. As she sat down, the door to the courtroom opened, and in walked a tall, confident woman. She had dark hair tied into a tight ponytail, and her sharp eyes scanned the room with a focus that sent a shiver down Emma's spine. She was dressed in a sleek, professional suit, but there was something about her that felt different. Emma couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she knew this woman was someone important. "Judge Stevens?" The woman's voice was smooth and firm, and she walked straight up to Emma's desk without waiting for an invitation. Emma looked up, her curiosity piqued. "Yes? Can I help you?" The woman smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. "My name is Natalie Rivers. I'm with the FBI." The word FBI hit Emma like a bolt of lightning. She had never imagined that federal agents would be involved in a case like this, but the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. If what Tom said was true, the people behind the crime were dangerous, and they had the resources to make sure Tom was framed. "I need to speak with you," Natalie said, her voice low. "It's about your friend, Tom Wilson. You're in serious danger if you continue to pursue this case, and I'm here to help you." Emma raised an eyebrow, unsure of whether she could trust this woman. She had worked in the justice system long enough to know that not everyone who said they were trying to help actually had good intentions. "What do you mean, serious danger?" Emma asked, her voice cautious. Natalie looked around the courtroom, as if making sure no one was listening. She leaned in closer to Emma, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's a criminal organization involved here, Judge. They've been running illegal operations for years, and they've got people everywhere. Law enforcement, business, even politics. The robbery Tom was accused of? It's just the tip of the iceberg." Emma felt her heart race. The situation was even worse than she had thought. She had to get to the bottom of this. But could she trust Natalie Rivers? "Why should I believe you?" Emma asked, her eyes narrowing. "How do I know you're really with the FBI?" Natalie gave her a quick, knowing smile. "I understand your skepticism, but if you want proof, I can show you. However, that's not important right now. What's important is that we work together. Tom is being used as a pawn, and if we don't move quickly, he's going to be convicted for something he didn't do." Emma considered her words carefully. She knew that if there was a criminal organization behind this, they were playing a much bigger game. She couldn't take chances, especially if people were willing to go to such lengths to frame Tom. "All right," Emma said after a moment. "What do you need me to do?" Natalie's eyes lit up with approval. "First, we need to get Tom out of here safely. Then, we'll start digging into the people behind the robbery. But we need to move fast. They're already onto him, and if we wait too long, it might be too late." Just then, the door opened again, and another figure walked into the room. This time, it was a man, and Emma immediately recognized him. It was Detective Ryan Carter, a local investigator who had worked with Emma on several cases in the past. He was tall, with a chiseled jawline and a no-nonsense attitude. "Detective Carter," Emma said, surprised to see him. "What brings you here?" Ryan's gaze flicked over to Natalie, then back to Emma. "I was just briefed on the situation. We need to work together on this, Judge. I've been tracking some strange activity around the bank where the robbery took place. It's linked to an underground network, and I think I know who's behind it." Emma felt a mix of relief and concern. On the one hand, it was good to have someone she trusted involved. On the other hand, the more people they involved, the more dangerous things could get. "Okay," Emma said, making up her mind. "We'll work together, but we need to be careful. The last thing we want is to alert the people behind this that we're onto them." Ryan nodded. "Agreed. I've got a few leads, and I think we can use them to track down the criminals without putting Tom at risk." Emma glanced back at Tom, who was still sitting in the defendant's chair. He looked lost and scared, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. She couldn't let him down. She had to protect him, no matter what. "We'll start working on this right away," Emma said. "But first, I need to get Tom out of here. If what you're saying is true, he's in immediate danger if he stays in custody." Natalie nodded. "We can arrange for his protection, but we need to act fast." The courtroom was beginning to fill up again, and Emma knew she didn't have much time. As the crowd took their seats, she stood up, signaling for everyone's attention. "Order in the court," she called out, her voice loud and commanding. The room fell silent. "I've decided to postpone the trial for today. I will be personally overseeing this case from here on out. I need to make sure that the right thing is done, and I will not allow anyone to be wrongfully convicted." Everyone in the courtroom seemed taken aback, but Emma's authority was clear. She turned to the bailiff. "Please escort Mr. Wilson out of the courtroom. We need to ensure his safety." Tom stood up, his eyes full of gratitude. As he walked toward the exit, he cast one last look at Emma. "Thank you," he whispered. As he left the courtroom, Emma turned to Ryan and Natalie. "We have no time to waste. Let's get to work." Ryan looked at her. "I've got some contacts I can call. We'll need to get someone to follow the leads without drawing attention." Natalie pulled out her phone and started typing quickly. "I'll make a few calls to my people. We'll need to track down the organization. And we'll need to be sure we're not walking into a trap." Emma stood tall, determination setting in. She had a duty to her friend, to the truth, and to the law. But she also had a feeling that this case was going to lead them down a much darker path than she could ever have imagined. As they walked out of the courtroom together, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change forever. But she was ready. With new allies and a renewed sense of purpose, Emma Stevens was prepared to face whatever dangers lay ahead, and she wouldn't stop until the truth was uncovered. As Emma, Ryan, and Natalie walked out of the courtroom, the weight of their mission settled heavily on their shoulders. They knew that what they were about to embark on would not only be dangerous, but could also uncover secrets far darker than they had imagined. The air outside felt colder, as if the universe was warning them of the peril ahead. Ryan was the first to speak as they walked toward their cars parked nearby. We need to start by getting some answers. We'll split up and cover different angles. Natalie, you can keep tabs on the underground network. I've got some sources who can help with that. Emma, you should focus on Tom. Make sure he's protected. If what you said about his safety is true, there's no time to waste. Emma nodded. Got it. We'll meet back here in 2 hours. We'll share whatever we find, and we'll plan our next move. If Tom's really in danger, we need to make sure no one can get to him. As the group went their separate ways, Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. Everything had changed so suddenly. From the courtroom to the chilling phone call, to meeting Natalie. This was no longer a simple trial. There were forces at play that she couldn't begin to understand. She drove to a quiet part of town, to the safe house where Tom was being kept. It wasn't much, just a small house in a quiet neighborhood far from the courthouse. But it would be enough, at least for now. Emma's mind raced as she drove, trying to piece together the information she had so far. The criminal organization behind the robbery was well connected, but why had they targeted Tom? What did he know, and what were they trying to hide? When she arrived, she saw 2 security guards standing outside the house, watching the street. They nodded at her as she approached, but Emma's focus was on Tom. She had to make sure he was all right. Inside, Tom sat on the couch, looking out the window, his face tense. He didn't look like the boy she remembered from childhood. He looked older, tired, and worried. But there was still a flicker of that same kind-hearted person she had once known. "How are you holding up?" Emma asked as she walked in. Tom stood up and smiled weakly. "I'm okay, I guess. Just scared. I never thought my life would end up like this. I don't know who I can trust anymore." Emma nodded. She could see the fear in his eyes, and it hurt her to know that her old friend had fallen into this situation. She pulled a chair closer to him and sat down. "You're not alone in this, Tom," she said firmly. "I'll help you. But I need you to tell me everything you can about what happened. The more I know, the better I can help you." Tom ran a hand through his hair and sighed deeply. "It's all so messed up. I didn't know who I was getting involved with at first. They made everything sound so easy. I thought I could just take the money and get out. But they weren't the kind of people you could walk away from. Once they had me, they made sure I'd never leave. And when the robbery happened, they knew I'd be blamed for it. They planned it all from the beginning." Emma leaned in closer. "Who are they, Tom? Who's behind this?" Tom's face grew even more anxious. "I don't know all their names, but there's one guy. His name is Victor Hayes. He's the one who's been running things. He's the leader of the group, and he's dangerous. He'll do anything to protect his operation. If he finds out I'm talking to you, I don't know what will happen." Victor Hayes. The name rang a bell in Emma's mind, but she couldn't place it. She needed more information, but Tom's fear was enough to tell her that this was a much bigger operation than she had thought. "We'll deal with Victor," Emma said, her voice unwavering. "But for now, you need to stay safe here. Keep your head down. Don't leave the house until I say so." Tom nodded, though he didn't look convinced. Emma could see the doubt in his eyes. He had already been through so much, and now he was trapped in a world he didn't understand. Before she left, Emma stood up and placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "I'm going to do everything I can to clear your name. You're not guilty, and I won't stop until everyone knows that." Tom gave her a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, Emma. I don't know what I'd do without you." With one last glance, Emma left the house. She had a lot to do, and time was running out. As she drove back to meet Ryan and Natalie, she couldn't stop thinking about Victor Hayes. She knew that if he was behind this, it would take all of their combined efforts to bring him down. The man was dangerous, and the organization he led was more powerful than anything Emma had ever faced. But she was determined. She had come too far to back down now. When Emma arrived at the meeting point, she found Ryan already waiting for her. He was talking to a man in a suit, a stranger with a serious expression. Natalie wasn't there yet, so Emma decided to approach Ryan first. "Who's this?" she asked, her voice calm but curious. Ryan turned and gave her a small nod. "This is Mark Henderson. He's a former member of the underground network we're dealing with. He's agreed to help us take them down." Emma's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A former member? How do we know he can be trusted?" Mark stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I know I don't look like much, but I want out. I've seen what these people can do. They destroy lives. They don't care about anyone, and I've had enough of it. I want to help you stop them." Emma studied him closely. She wasn't sure she could trust him either, but if what he was saying was true, he might be the key to getting the information they needed to bring down the whole operation. She nodded slowly. "All right," Emma said. "We'll need your help, but you'll be watched. I don't trust anyone fully yet. You understand that?" Mark nodded, his face serious. "I get it. I'll prove I'm on your side." Just then, Natalie arrived, her face tight with worry. "We've got a problem," she said, looking at the group with urgency. "I found a lead. Victor Hayes is moving the operation tonight. He's not wasting any time. If we don't act fast, he's going to disappear with everything." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Where's he going?" "To a place outside the city," Natalie replied. "A warehouse. That's where they're hiding all the stolen money and supplies. If we want to stop him, we have to go now." Emma looked at her team, Ryan, Natalie, and now Mark. She knew they were about to walk into the lion's den, but she also knew that this was their only chance to catch Victor Hayes and end this nightmare. "We go together," Emma said firmly. "This ends tonight." With that, the group piled into their cars and headed for the warehouse. Emma's mind raced with everything they had learned, but one thing was certain. The closer they got to Victor Hayes, the more dangerous things would become. But Emma was ready. She had already made her choice. Nothing would stop her from bringing the truth to light. The showdown was about to begin. The drive to the warehouse felt longer than it should have. Emma couldn't shake the sense of urgency, and every turn of the wheel brought her closer to a confrontation that could change everything. As they approached the outskirts of the city, the streets grew darker and emptier. A sense of tension settled over the group. "Stay sharp," Ryan said from the driver's seat, his eyes scanning the road ahead. "This is it. We don't know what we're walking into. If Hayes has this operation running as smoothly as we think, he's probably got guards everywhere." Mark, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward from the back seat. "You're not wrong. I've seen Hayes's people. They don't mess around. If we're going in, we need to be prepared for anything." Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The closer they got to the warehouse, the more her mind raced. They had to get in, find the evidence, and get out without alerting anyone. It was risky, but there was no other choice. This was the only chance they had to stop Hayes and his network. As they pulled into the area where the warehouse was located, Emma could see the looming shadows of the large building in the distance. It was hidden behind a line of trees, tucked away from the main road. The place looked abandoned, but Emma knew better. She could already feel the presence of danger. "All right," Emma said, her voice steady. "We park a little further down and approach on foot. We'll go in quietly, split up, and reconvene once we find something." If you find Hayes, don't engage him unless you have no choice. We need him alive." Ryan gave a quick nod. "Got it." The group silently got out of the cars and made their way toward the warehouse. The gravel beneath their boots crunched softly, but it was the silence of the night that made every sound seem amplified. Every breath, every footstep felt louder than it should. Emma felt her nerves settle, replaced by a steely focus. This was what she had trained for. This was why she became a judge, to fight for the truth. As they approached the entrance, Natalie motioned for them to stop. "There are 2 guards by the door. We can't go in without being seen." Emma scanned the area. The building was surrounded by large crates and containers. The guards were standing at the front entrance, unaware of their approach. Emma turned to the team. "I've got an idea," Emma whispered. "Mark, you know this place better than we do. Can you get us inside without them seeing us?" Mark gave a knowing look. "I can try. Follow my lead." He led them around the back of the warehouse, where they found a narrow alleyway lined with dumpsters and old barrels. It smelled of oil and rust, and the ground was slippery with grime. Mark motioned for them to stay close. Then he stopped in front of a small door near the back of the building. "This should lead into the supply room. If we can get inside, we'll have a better chance of getting to the main area without being spotted." Ryan pushed the door gently. It creaked, but didn't open fully. Mark glanced at Emma, who nodded for him to continue. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small set of tools. Within seconds, he had the lock picked, and the door swung open quietly. Inside, the room was dark, filled with crates and stacks of boxes. The air smelled musty, and it was difficult to see anything in the dim light. They moved quickly, but silently, making their way through the maze of goods to the next door that would lead them into the heart of the warehouse. Before they could reach it, a sound caught their attention. A low voice, muffled through the walls, followed by footsteps. Someone was moving through the warehouse. "Get down!" Ryan hissed, pulling Emma and Natalie behind a stack of crates. They crouched low, holding their breath, as the footsteps drew closer. A figure appeared at the corner of the hallway, a man in a dark jacket. He walked past them, unaware of their presence. Emma's heart raced as she kept her eyes fixed on the man, praying he wouldn't turn around. Once the footsteps faded, they breathed a collective sigh of relief. "That was too close," Natalie whispered. "Stay alert," Emma responded. "We need to find Hayes. Let's move." They continued through the warehouse, moving from room to room, staying hidden whenever anyone passed by. As they rounded a corner, they found a staircase leading up to a second level. Emma motioned for everyone to follow. The second floor was quieter, but there were more signs of activity. Emma could hear voices ahead. They approached cautiously, peeking around the corner to see a group of men gathered in a room, talking in low voices. Among them was Victor Hayes. Emma's breath caught in her throat. There he was, the man who had orchestrated everything. He was standing with his back to them, surrounded by his men, discussing something in hushed tones. Emma couldn't hear everything, but she could make out a few words. Shipment, delivery, and final stage. "That's our guy," Mark said under his breath. Emma motioned for everyone to stay back, then crept closer to hear more. She needed to know what Hayes was planning, but she also knew they couldn't get caught. Just then, a loud crash rang through the room. Someone had knocked over a crate downstairs, and suddenly the men in the room turned, alarmed. "Check it out!" Hayes barked. "Now!" Before anyone could react, Emma grabbed Ryan's arm. "We need to move. Now!" The group dashed down the hallway, but as they reached the stairs, they heard the sound of footsteps chasing them. "They know we're here!" Ryan shouted. "Hurry!" They rushed down the stairs and out of the back door, but as they emerged into the alley, they were met by a new figure, a tall man with dark sunglasses and a large, menacing build. His arms were crossed, and his presence was commanding. "Going somewhere?" the man asked with a smirk. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any guard. This man was a hit man, and he didn't look like someone who'd be easy to escape. Before Emma could react, Ryan spoke. "You're not getting out of here alive. We're not leaving without Victor." The hitman's grin grew wider. "You should have stayed out of this, but now it's too late." The group stood ready, tense and prepared for a fight. But just as the standoff began, the sound of a car engine revving broke the silence. A black SUV skidded to a stop at the end of the alley, its headlights blinding in the dark. The doors opened, and more figures emerged, including someone Emma didn't expect to see, her old friend, Detective Lauren Blackwell. Lauren was known for her sharp instincts and her no-nonsense approach to law enforcement. She had been part of several high-profile cases with Emma before. Seeing her now, at such a critical moment, could change everything. "Emma!" Lauren called, rushing toward them. "Get back! These guys are connected to a much bigger operation than you think. We have backup on the way, but you need to stay clear." Emma's eyes widened as Lauren pulled out her badge. "Lauren, what are you doing here? This isn't just any operation. We're trying to stop Hayes and—" "I know," Lauren interrupted, looking around cautiously. "But we can't take them all on alone. Trust me, we have to wait for the rest of the team." Emma hesitated. This was getting bigger than she ever imagined. But with Lauren here, there was a chance they could make it out alive. For now, they would have to trust the plan. The standoff continued, but for the first time, Emma felt a sliver of hope. The tense standoff in the alley grew heavier with each passing second. Emma, Ryan, Natalie, Mark, and Lauren stood in a tight circle, facing down the group of hitmen and Victor Hayes's men, with only the dim light of the SUV's headlights illuminating their surroundings. The silence between them was deafening, only broken by the distant sound of approaching sirens. "Lauren, we need to move," Emma said, her voice steady but urgent. "We're not going to be able to hold them off forever." Lauren didn't hesitate. She looked back at the SUV and motioned for the others to follow her. "I brought backup, but they won't be here for another few minutes. We need to stall them." Suddenly, from behind the SUV, a new figure emerged. Another man. This one dressed in tactical gear, holding a large rifle. His presence was commanding, and his face was hidden behind a helmet. He didn't speak, but his stance made it clear he was ready for whatever came next. "Who's this?" Emma asked, glancing at Lauren. "This is Gabriel," Lauren replied, her voice calm. "He's ex-military, and he's here to help. He's trained to handle situations like this." Emma nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. With Gabriel on their side, they had a fighting chance, but the odds were still stacked against them. "Where's Hayes?" Ryan asked, his voice low. Lauren motioned toward the back of the warehouse. "He's still inside, but he won't be alone. The moment they realize we're here, they'll bring reinforcements. We need to move fast." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from around the corner. More of Hayes's men appeared, this time with weapons drawn. They weren't the typical thugs. They looked organized, military even. "I knew this was too easy," Ryan muttered. Without warning, Gabriel moved quickly, taking cover behind a dumpster and raising his rifle. He fired a warning shot into the air. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the alley, and the hitmen paused for a moment, assessing the situation. "This doesn't have to end in violence," Gabriel shouted, his voice deep and calm. "But if you want to keep breathing, you'll back off. Now." For a moment, there was silence. Then one of the hitmen, a large man with a thick beard, stepped forward. You think you can just walk in here and take down Victor Hayes? He sneered. You're in over your head. Lauren stepped forward, her hand resting on her gun. We're not here to negotiate. You're outnumbered, and your boss is going down tonight. The hitman chuckled darkly. You think so? He snapped his fingers, and instantly more armed men poured out from the shadows. The odds had just gotten worse. This is your last warning, Gabriel said, his voice steady. Leave, or we'll force you to. Emma glanced at Ryan and Natalie. They were ready for whatever came next. But then, just as the situation seemed like it would spiral into chaos, another car pulled into the alley. The car was sleek, black, and silent as it rolled to a stop, the engine humming softly. From the back seat, a woman stepped out, tall, with sharp features, long black hair, and a calm but intimidating presence. She was dressed in a professional suit, but there was no mistaking the aura of power that surrounded her. She glanced around the alley, assessing the situation with a practiced eye before walking toward the group. Stand down, she ordered, her voice cool and controlled. For a moment, everything froze. The hitmen, Gabriel, and even Lauren seemed to hesitate, as if they were waiting for the woman to make her move. Who are you? Lauren asked, her eyes narrowing. The woman didn't answer immediately. She glanced at Emma, her gaze lingering for a moment longer than necessary. I believe we have some mutual interests, Emma, she said finally, as if testing the waters. My name is Isabella Davenport. I work for a very exclusive organization, and we've been keeping an eye on Victor Hayes for quite some time. Emma's eyes narrowed. You're part of Hayes's operation? Not at all, Isabella replied with a smirk. In fact, I'm here to stop him, before he causes more damage. But I'm not here to help you for free. If you want my help, you'll have to play by my rules. Emma was taken aback. She wasn't sure if she could trust this woman, but right now, the odds were so against them that she was willing to entertain the idea. What do you want in exchange? She asked cautiously. Isabella smiled, a glint of amusement in her eyes. All in good time, Emma. For now, let's focus on getting rid of Hayes. The hitman who had been talking before scoffed, clearly unimpressed. You think this woman can stop us? He sneered. Isabella's smile widened. I don't think. I know. Without another word, she stepped to the side. And to Emma's surprise, a sleek black drone rose from the shadows, hovering above them. It was a small, stealthy device, clearly designed for surveillance. With a few quick motions, Isabella activated it. The drone darted toward the warehouse, its tiny camera focused on the interior. Through the small screen she held in her hand, Isabella could see the movements of Hayes's men. They were gathering in one of the back rooms, as if preparing for something. But it wasn't just guards. They were carrying crates of something. Money? Weapons? Isabella looked back at Emma and gave a nod. It's all coming together, but we need to move quickly. Hayes will be gone soon, and once he disappears, it'll be harder to catch him. Emma glanced at Ryan and Natalie, who were watching Isabella with skepticism. What exactly is it that you want, Isabella? Emma asked again, her patience wearing thin. Isabella met her gaze with a steady look. You want to stop Hayes. I want to make sure he doesn't slip through our fingers. If you help me get him, we both win. Emma hesitated, but she knew they didn't have much time to debate. Fine, but after this, we'll talk about what you want. Isabella gave a small nod of approval. Deal. With that, the group began to move again, ready to storm the warehouse with Isabella's intel. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they made their way back toward the building. But now they had an edge. Isabella's drone had given them valuable information. Hayes was still inside, and he was preparing for a getaway. "This is it," Ryan whispered. "We get in, take him down, and get out." But as they reached the warehouse entrance once more, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. With Isabella's unexpected arrival, new questions were beginning to form. What was her real motive? And what else was Victor Hayes hiding? The door was ajar. They had to make their move before Hayes vanished again. Emma took a deep breath, and they rushed inside, ready for whatever came next. But as they stepped into the darkness, they heard a voice call from the shadows. "Looking for me?" Victor Hayes. The chase was far from over. Victor Hayes's voice echoed through the dimly lit warehouse, sending a chill down Emma's spine. They had finally cornered him, but the feeling of victory was fleeting. The moment they'd been preparing for had arrived, but now the real challenge began. From the shadows, Hayes stepped forward. His calm demeanor was unsettling, as if he knew something they didn't. He looked at Isabella, then back at Emma, Ryan, and the others. "You're too late," Hayes said, a sly grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You think you've won, but you're only seeing the surface. There's more going on here than you could ever understand." Emma took a step forward, her voice firm. "You're done, Hayes. We have the evidence, and we're not leaving without you." Hayes smirked. "You think your little team can take me down? You've got no idea what you're up against." Before Emma could respond, the ground beneath them seemed to shift. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps filled the room as Hayes's men appeared from the shadows, their weapons raised. It was a trap. "Don't move," Hayes said, his tone suddenly cold. "This is the end of the road for you." Isabella stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "You think you can just walk away from this, Hayes? You're not the only one with secrets." Without warning, Isabella's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Gabriel, now!" Gabriel, the ex-military man, moved with precision. In an instant, he took down 2 of Hayes's men, his movements fast and calculated. Ryan and Mark followed suit, disarming another group of guards. The chaos erupted as the 2 sides clashed, but Emma, Ryan, and the others kept their focus on Hayes. "You won't win this," Hayes sneered, his eyes darting nervously as his men were quickly overwhelmed. "Not today," Emma said, taking a steady step forward. In a swift movement, she tackled Hayes to the ground, pinning him beneath her. His bodyguards had been defeated, and the rest of the warehouse was under control. Isabella moved in, her calm demeanor returning. "You're under arrest, Hayes." Hayes struggled beneath her, but it was clear that the fight was over. He was done. As the police arrived, led by Lauren, to take Hayes into custody, Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. They had done it. They had stopped him. Isabella gave Emma a knowing smile. "Good work, Emma. You've got him." Emma nodded, but then paused. "You knew about Hayes all along, didn't you? This wasn't just about stopping him, it was about something more. What's really going on here, Isabella?" Isabella's gaze softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a glimpse of vulnerability. "There's a bigger game at play, Emma. Hayes was just one part of it. But we'll get to that later." Emma didn't push further. She had enough on her plate. For now, Hayes was in custody, and that was enough. The rest could wait. Moral lesson. The story of Emma and her team highlights the importance of perseverance, trust, and teamwork in the face of adversity. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they stayed focused on their goal and trusted each other to overcome the challenges they faced. In life, we may encounter obstacles that seem insurmountable, but with determination, collaboration, and a clear sense of purpose, we can find ways to succeed. Sometimes the bigger picture may be more complicated than we realize, but staying true to our values and focusing on what matters most will always lead us toward the right path.